All right, we are joined here today by Dr. Jill Stein, who's the Green Party candidate for president, otherwise known as that kind of mythical creature that appears in comment sections all across the internet when somebody is in any article about Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, for that matter. But here she is in the flesh. She'll be taking your questions. Tell people who only have heard Stein 2016. Two things. Any relation to Sam Stein, and tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from?
Sure.
How'd you get into politics?
Great. So I don't know that I'm related to Sam Stein. Maybe we are way back. Maybe I'll meet him someday and we'll figure it out.
Is he here?
Is he? I'll have to check him out.
He just interviewed the other woman running for president. Actually,
her,
earlier
yes.
today. Yeah. Her.
The one who's not really a feminist, by the way. So we can talk about that later, too. But, yeah, so by training and by profession, I'm a medical doctor. And now I used to practice clinical medicine for decades. Now I practice political medicine because it's the mother of all illnesses, and we got to fix that one if we want to fix what's literally killing us. I was sort of tricked into running for office after many years as an advocate and an activist for a healthcare system that's for people and not for profit, which we're having trouble achieving, for a safe and healthy environment. And in particular, I was alarmed by the epidemic of many diseases, from asthma to cancers to developmental disabilities to diabetes, all these new diseases we didn't used to have in my day. That's how I sort of got my start, saying, hey, this doesn't feel good to just throw pills and medical procedures at this stuff, because that's not exactly making us well, and it's making a lot of people bankrupt. So I went out to deal with the things that are causing these problems out in our communities, worked with community groups for real solutions, like cleaning up our coal plants and our incinerators, and instead creating real jobs that are healthy for people and the planet and the economy. But over and over again, we were thwarted by our legislature that was working for the guys that are making money from the coal industry and the incinerator industry and the health insurance industry, and you name it. So the bottom line for me was fighting for campaign finance reform, which we passed, the Democrats repealed in our legislature. For me, that cemented my future as a Green Party activist when the Democrats killed campaign finance reform in Massachusetts.
All right. So if you have questions for Dr. Stein, put them into the put them into the comment section here, and we'll read them. For now, third-party candidates have taken different approaches when it comes to swing states. So, and I think actually Ralph Nader has taken, when he was the Green Party presidential candidate, he kind of went back and forth on this issue. Kevin, who was with him then, I might remember a little bit more. But there is a question of, okay, if you're in a swing state, and if the insurgency has not brought you to a neck-and-neck horse race with Hillary Clinton or with Donald Trump, and it does look like it's going to be Clinton or Trump on Election Day, there are two schools of thought. One is, if you're in a swing state, pick the lesser of two evils. But if you're in a non-swing state, then vote your conscience and send a message. The other school of thought is, screw it, no matter what state you're in, no matter where the candidate is polling, vote for whoever you want. So on the swing state question, so to your supporters who might live in swing states, and it's not clear which states are going to be swing at this point. Utah right now is up for grabs, for instance. What would you tell them? And do you plan on campaigning in swing states?
So, the swing state thing is sometimes described as the safe state and the non-safe states. In my view, there is no safe state. In an age where we are exploding into a new nuclear arms race, thanks to the Democrats and Barack Obama, thanks to Hillary Clinton, who wants to engage in air war over Syria, we are not safe with either political party, and no state is safe, either of the major parties. If you're looking at the deportation of immigrants, Donald Trump and the Republicans are the party of hate and fear-mongering. But the Democrats, unfortunately, are the party of deportation and night raids against who? Women and children, many of whom are fleeing from the corporate coup that was supported by Hillary Clinton in Honduras. If you want to look at the climate, Donald Trump is a disaster for the climate. But unfortunately, Hillary Clinton was out there as Secretary of State promoting fracking around the world. So in my view, there is no safe state. And in this election, we are in an existential moment. We are not only deciding what kind of world we will be, but whether we will have a world at all. The lesser evil has actually created all those things we were afraid of, all the reasons we were told to vote our fears and not our values. The politics of fear delivered everything we were afraid of. Reject the lesser evil, stand up and fight for the greater good. The lesser evil, unfortunately, doesn't fix it. It only intensifies the problem. Just to look at Donald Trump's supporters, what raised up Donald Trump? The economic insecurity and crisis caused by the policies of the Clintons, namely NAFTA and Wall Street deregulation. Putting another Clinton in the White House will only fan the flames of that right-wing revolt. We have to stand up and create the world that we want. The predator political parties funded by the big banks and the fossil fuel giants and the war profiteers, they are not going to do it for us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And if I can make one last comment, there are 43 million young people right now who are locked into student loan debt with no way out. The important thing to know is that 43 million is a winning plurality of the vote. So when people tell you it's hopeless and you're powerless, reject that as propaganda, because in fact, just by getting the word out that young people can come out and take over this election and cancel student debt and move forward on a whole agenda of justice, that can actually be achieved simply by standing up with the courage of our convictions and moving forward with what is within our reach.
So you'd say, if you're a voter in a swing state and it looks like it's close on election day between Clinton and Trump, don't worry about it, vote for Stein?
I say if Hillary gets elected, I'm not sleeping. You know, if Trump gets elected, I'm not sleeping. I think, you know, the most therapeutic thing we can do for our sleep and for our future on the planet is to stand up and start taking our democracy back. And the more vigorous we are, I'd say don't wait until election day. Get moving on it right now. And if you happen to be in debt, just by letting your friends and colleagues know, organizing on the internet, as millennials are really great at doing, we can begin to change the dynamics. We're at 5% right now, which is unprecedented. How did we get there? We don't have a budget. We're not being covered by corporate media. We're getting there because young people are self-organizing and saying, oh my God, in this race, we actually have a way forward that can deliver the jobs, end the debt, free public higher education, and so on. That is achievable if we stand up for it.
I think a lot of how you feel about this question comes down to how you feel about the election in 2000 and what you think the consequences of that election are. So
I think you need selective amnesia, actually, to just look at 2000. I think it's also important to look at the last 8 years, including 2 years under 2 Democratic houses of Congress, where we got all those reasons we were told we should not vote our values, vote your fears. We got all of those things. So I think, yes, Republicans are a disaster, but it's a race to the bottom between the greater and lesser evil. Neither will solve it for us.
What I think a lot of people didn't foresee was the depth of the evil that was possible after 2000, particularly the invasion of Iraq, which I don't think anybody can deny has changed the course of human history much for the worse.
Do you think that the meltdown of Wall Street didn't change the course of human history? Do you think NAFTA didn't change the course of human history?
But what does that have? I mean, we're talking about the Iraq War here.
Oh,
so.
Well, we're not. Right. But why only talk? I mean, that's what I mean by selective amnesia. Let's focus on those things that the political hacks and the corporate pundits would like to focus on in order to sort of stay the course. I think we really need to look at the people who are being thrown under the bus.
Hundreds of thousands of people died as a result of
and it didn't stop there,
wars.
unfortunately.
Right.
And Barack Obama fought tooth and nail to keep the troops in Iraq, to stay. And unfortunately, George Bush had set a date for withdrawal that required the war in Iraq to end. But Obama continued that war, surged into Afghanistan, promoted the war in Syria, in Libya, led by Hillary Clinton, no less. So, I think people would like to frame this in a way that's very disempowering to everyday people who, by the way, are paying $75,000 per household for these wars. Yes, started by George Bush, but then continued by Barack Obama
I'm just
for the
curious
past
for your
8
take.
years.
Do you think Gore would have started that war?
I don't know, but I know, put it this way, I know that we've seen money and power become enormously concentrated into very few hands. So the Republican Party has shifted in a horrific direction, and unfortunately the Democratic Party has gone lockstep with them. And I think it's important to start where we are now. Let's not pretend that the Democratic Party we have today is going to rescue us, because they had that opportunity in 2008 with 2 Democratic houses of Congress and a Democratic White House. So I think they need to be held accountable as well. We have a disaster. Who re-engaged the nuclear arms race? Who is spending $1 trillion to create a new generation of nuclear weapons and modes of delivery? Who has promoted? All of the above has been drill, baby, drill on steroids. It's been far more destructive to the climate under the past 8 years of Democratic rule than it was under the Republicans. And we have seen the lid go off of fossil fuel production under the Democrats with no end in sight. And believe me, the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, says that by 2050, we can expect 9 feet of sea level rise, which is not a hit that civilization can survive. We need a dramatic change of course right now. We need to take our democracy back. Unfortunately, we've seen that Hillary Clinton is firmly in the pocket, and what Trump says, Hillary unfortunately has done. So there should be no illusion of having a safe harbor inside of a Clinton administration.
The pitch the Clintons have made kind of throughout their career is that, okay, we might not be the most progressive option, but the fascists are coming. That wasn't much of a plausible argument to be made up until Donald Trump came along. A lot of people talk about Trump in terms...
Depending on your skin color,
Right.
I think. I think there are a lot of people of color who felt like the Clintons, criminal justice reform bill actually brought fascist rule to their communities in the form of militarized
So for
police
you-
and an unjust
Right.
prison system.
So for you, when people say that Donald Trump represents a break with the kind of norms of our politics, and that he could be a road towards some type of fascist authoritarian state, to you, actually, we were already there. So
Well, to me, Donald Trump doesn't really stand apart from the other Republicans who have a very explicit, horrific agenda. But that has been enabled, and I should say empowered, by the neoliberal policies of the Clintons and the Democrats, who basically destroyed our jobs, sent them overseas, enabled Wall Street to become the oppressive oligarchs that they are right now, for whom Hillary Clinton is the cheerleader. In this race, we have a choice between a cheerleader for the billionaire club, Hillary Clinton, or a member of the billionaire club. And Donald Trump, unfortunately,
I don't think he's actually a billionaire.
Well, he would claim he is. Who
He
cares
certainly-
whether
he-
he
he
is or
claims
not?
he is. He claims he is.
But his power comes from the incredible right-wing reaction against the meltdown on Wall Street and the offshoring of our jobs, which was brought to us by the Clintons. So, as Bernie Sanders himself has said, we need real progressive policies. And I'd say let's not forget what the American people are clamoring for, which is a new, independent, third-party voice, because the 2 major parties have done such a lousy job of representing people. Average wages now are barely above poverty. The jobs that have come back are low wage and part-time. An entire generation of young people are trapped in debt. And the Democrats have gotten us here. They are not, the policies that Hillary Clinton is advocating are not getting us out. We want to create a Green New Deal that can get us out of the Great Depression, that can actually create 20 million jobs right now, good wage jobs, to revive our economy and to prevent catastrophic climate change by moving right now by 2030 to 100% wind, water, and sun. We're calling for abolishing student debt, canceling it, like we did for the friggin' bankers who crashed the economy with their waste, fraud, and abuse. Don't young people deserve that? Young people who are the victims? For a tiny fraction of the Wall Street bailout, we can cancel student debt, and the president has the authority to do that by virtue of appointing the Federal Reserve. So just by coming out to cancel student debt, 43 million people is enough to actually make it so.
Hey Ryan, real quick, a couple people are...
Well, I want to do one that I noticed in here.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a debate going on in the comment thread about whether or not the Green Party actually did swing the election, from
Yes.
Bush to Gore. And Nader has kind of two views on this, and I wanted to get yours. Nader's view is, it's not true. We didn't swing the election to Bush. There are lots of other reasons. But then kind of separately and sort of in contradiction, it doesn't matter because they're the same. So
Well,
you know what I mean? It's sort of like a
Yes.
dodging guilt, but it's also
Sure.
like, well, there was no crime,
let
so
me
who's
be
guilty?
clear.
Sure.
I do not believe, and the Green Party does not believe, that Democrats and Republicans are the same.
Okay.
The problem is that the differences are not big enough to save your job, to save your health, to save your life, or to save the planet.
Unless
That-
you died in the war.
Well, but remember, that war has been conducted for the past 8 years by the Democrats and by Barack Obama, and that war has been massively expanded. Absolutely, the differences are not big enough to make the change. And, you can debate the numbers either way you want. In my view, the important thing is we can fix that voting system. Why should we be hogtied by a voting system that gives us two deadly choices and says, okay, folks, now pick one? The reality is, with the stroke of a pen in any state legislature or in Congress, it would take about 24 hours to change that voting system to what's called ranked choice voting, which exists in many cities around the country and in countries around the world, that lets you actually rank your choices. Why should your vote be a reckless gamble based on a calculation that it just cannot be made? Your vote should be based on your values. If you can't bring your values to your vote, then democracy is left without a moral compass, and then we are a ship lost at sea in a storm. Let's just change the voting system so that, and we could do it right now in time for the November 8 election, so that you can actually go to the polls. And I'd say for all the people who are hand-wringing and who are freaking out about, oh, you're going to split the vote. By the way, Gary Johnson is in this race. There may be selective amnesia about that fact as well, but right now there's parity. There's parity that meets the urgent needs of the American people who are saying they don't like either of these candidates at record numbers, they dislike them, they do not trust them, and they are calling for other voices. Let's respond to the urgent needs of the American people instead of telling them, intimidating them out of what is essential based on their experience.
And hopefully we can implement a ranked voting system, but in the meantime, the Democratic primary seems to be the most open outlet for an expression of those kinds of values. Bernie Sanders, who you've talked about having even on your ticket for president, ran and came very close to winning. Do you, in hindsight, wish that you had kind of gotten your movement behind him in order to try to take over the Democratic Party rather than running outside of it?
In fact, many Greens did support Bernie. In California, about 1/3 of Greens re-registered in order to vote for Bernie. But we see what happened in California, which is a great case in point, where Hillary won by less than 500,000 votes, but 2 million votes remain uncounted. Or you can look at the Nevada Democratic Convention and the rigging of that convention that rammed through rules changes in order to minimize Bernie's votes. Or the tricks that were played by the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, that shut him down in debate after debate, that refused to basically lift up Bernie's voice early and often, as they had done in other races. The Democratic Party has shut down progressive candidates before, which is why we knew better than to throw all our eggs into that basket inside of the Democratic Party, where it was very clear from the start that for the Democrats, again, this was going to be a fake left, then sabotage the campaign and go right. Over the years, despite Dennis Kucinich, whom the Democrats redistricted, despite Howard Dean, who had a strong head of steam and was basically taken down by a smear campaign, the Dean Scream, or Jesse Jackson, who was also taken down by a DNC a disinformation campaign. The Democratic Party is a fake left, move right party that continues to become more corporatist, more militarist, and more imperialist as we go. That's why we say, forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good, like our lives depend on it, especially knowing that if we stand up with the courage of our convictions, we can actually turn this around, even in the course of this election.
You said that you had some questions you
Oh,
wanted
no,
to...
a couple people were wondering, could you remind them that you're checking for comments and you're not reading text messages during the interview?
Oh, are people mad? They think I'm like looking at text messages. Look, people, you guys are the ones that are falling down. I'm trying to look for questions that you're dropping in the comment section, but all it is a bunch of Jill is the best. I love Jill. She's a joke. Jill, shut up. Jill is a legend. So you're not helping me because I have to scroll through all of this different commentary
I have a
to try to
question.
find a question. So you can't add on to that a criticism of me like I'm checking Twitter or
Let's
something.
support
Come
this
on.
poor guy.
See? Come on. Yeah, here we go.
Here's a question that I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to answer it. But let us know. Reflect back at us with your comments. Would you like to have an open debate? Would you like to have Gary Johnson and myself included in the debates? And starting sooner rather than later. Let's not wait to 2 weeks before the election. Let's get the word out sooner rather than later that people actually have a choice. You can go to my website, jill2016.com, and join our open debates initiative, because we have some action in store. You may recall in 2012 I got arrested along with my wonderful running mate Sherry Honkala in the effort to bring attention to opening the debates just for showing up at a debate I should have been in. And in my view, we not only have a right to vote as voters, we have a right to know who it is that we can vote for. So the American public deserves open debates, and there should be a simple, common sense rule, and that is that if a candidate is on the ballot for enough voters that the candidate could actually win through the Electoral College, then the voters deserve to know about that choice. If that rule was applied, we would have 4 candidates in these debates. The Commission on Presidential Debates, it sounds very official, but it is basically a BS commission that was labeled by the League of Women Voters as being a fraud being perpetrated on the American public. They control who gets in so as to suppress political opposition. They control the media who gets in, they control the moderator and therefore the questions that get asked, and they control the audience to create the illusion that there is support for this elitist, corporatist agenda, which there's not. So let's force open the gates of democracy and start to take our future back. Join our campaign to open up the debates.
Here's one from Brian Brogan. How about you read the comments that you're a horrible reporter? No debate there.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Elizabeth Warren, there's been a lot of speculation that she might be Hillary Clinton's running mate. What should progressives and Green Party members make of that?
Well, in my view, this is a sad move to the right for Elizabeth Warren rather than a move to the left for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton has a very well-established track record. If Elizabeth Warren signs on to the Clinton agenda, that's unfortunate, and I say that as someone who is represented by Elizabeth Warren as a citizen of Massachusetts, whom Elizabeth Warren represents. I think at the end of the day, it's really important to take stock of the Democratic Party, and I feel like I'm telling like I'm telling people that there is no Santa Claus, that you cannot have a revolutionary campaign inside of a counter-revolutionary party. Elizabeth Warren is not going to be the replacement for Bernie Sanders. We need to stand up and continue that revolution in a political party that is here to build. If the movement gets absorbed back into the Democratic Party, it's goodbye to the movement. This has happened too many times before to be led down that path again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 1,000 times, really shame on me. Let's not go there.
We have to wrap up pretty soon, but we have an actual question, so let's read this one. What's your policy on student debt? How is it different from Bernie's solution? Is your model a feasible structure? That's from Jules Robichaud.
Great. Thank you, Jules. I think that is the gateway issue in this election because a younger generation is missing in action, not only from our economy, but from our society and from our communities. It's always been the younger generation that leads the way forward on transformative change, and boy, do we need transformative change right now. So my first action as president, if I am lucky enough to turn the White House into a greenhouse with your help, if we can do that, my first act will actually to appoint a chair of the Federal Reserve who will undertake this magic trick called quantitative easing, which basically means your debt is canceled. Your debt is over and done with. You are free and good to go. And I will be working also to make public higher education free, which we can do. For one thing, it pays for itself 7 times over. For every dollar taxpayers put into public higher education for free, we get back $7 in return. So there's absolutely no excuse not to do this. And that will transform the economy. It will repatriate an entire generation that's been hung out to dry so that you can lead the way forward with us to a jobs program for everyone. You not only have a right to education, you have a right to a job as part of a Green New Deal that will transform our energy, our food, and our public transportation system and put to rest this climate crisis, which also threatens our future and makes wars for oil obsolete as we become fully energy independent.
Here's from Susie Griffith. Is the Green platform immovable on foreign policy? That is the only part of the platform that makes me nervous. It seems with all the hatred aimed toward the U.S. that making our military so much smaller, I'm all for some reduction, but Green's position is pretty radical, is a very risky move. From Susie Griffith.
So thank you for raising that. It's a really critical question. And, personally, I don't talk about a specific cut until we have really established what kind of foreign policy is going to make us secure. And it turns out, all the big military expenditures, those are for the giant weapon systems. That's for fighting, Russia and for fighting China in these invented conflicts, which have been basically invented over the last many years to create opportunities for the war profiteers to sell weapons. We've got that military-industrial complex problem that President Eisenhower talked about, where you've got basically the representatives of the industry who are creating enemies for the weapons industry to make a lot of money off of. But if you're talking about the terror threat, we don't need massive weapons systems. So the money basically comes out of the budget right there. In addition, if you look at these bases that we have all around the world, why did 9/11 happen in the first place? Remember why 9/11 happened? Al-Qaeda was all upset about U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. So it's by having troops where they are not welcomed and where they create trouble and where they're involved in murders and in abuse, partner abuse and domestic abuse. That's where enormous animosity is created towards America. So if we don't need to be safeguarding new oil supplies, which is basically what the military budget is about, taking access to other people's oil and then providing routes of transportation, then actually we can reduce the military budget enormously. But let me tell you one other thing, and this is how we pay for the Green New Deal. We get so much healthier the minute we eliminate fossil fuel pollution that the health benefits alone are enough to pay the costs of the energy transition. This is a well-kept secret, but it's well documented by studies, and this also happened in the country of Cuba when their oil pipeline went down. They got so much healthier. Their death rates from diabetes went down 50%, death rates from heart attacks and strokes went down 30%, and it cost them $0. And it happened because they had a healthy green food system and a healthy energy system. We can get there too. We're spending $3 trillion a year right now on a sick care system, and we can massively reduce those expenditures by moving through the Green New Deal to a healthy food and energy system.
Time for one more question, right? And I'll read one response to the student loan thing and then do the last question. Wayne Lewis says, yes, MMT can finance the third industrial revolution of distributed networks of locally produced green energy linked up in a nationwide smart grid, providing the platform for the Internet of Things. Are you an MMT economist? Like, is that your the modern monetary theory? Basically what you were talking about, the idea that the limit of what the government can spend is not related to its tax revenue, it's related to the productive capacity of the economy, so the Fed actually can do what you were saying.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. People should look up MMT.
Yes, it's very interesting. Abraham Lincoln used this in issuing greenbacks. Yes, and I think there needs to be a lot of discussion about it before we jump to it. But clearly, the Fed is using this in its quantitative easing, so we can put that to work immediately while we move forward with this broader public discussion about MMT. But it's a huge resource that we need to be using.
And so the last question is probably one you get a lot from Ryan Holmes. How would a Green Party member get anything passed in Congress with many question marks?
Great. So unlike Barack Obama...
And thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Unlike Barack Obama, if I am elected, thanks to your help, we will continue to work together. I will not put you on the shelf and go to work for Wall Street because I'm not funded by Wall Street. I have never worked for Wall Street. My agenda is very clear, and I've been asked before to come over to the dark side, and I have said no. So I have a track record here for working on this and doing what I say and saying what I do. So we will continue to work together. If I get elected, I will not only be elected, but incredible candidates like Margaret Flowers, who is running as one of the main proponents of an improved Medicare for All system, a wonderful physician, eloquent spokesperson. Margaret is running for Senate in Maryland. Joshua Harris is running for mayor of Baltimore, actually, as a Green Party candidate. Check them both out. Support their campaigns. There are literally scores, probably hundreds of candidates around the country who are running on the Green Party ticket who would also be elected. So I wouldn't be the only one, but most important is the power of this movement, which would continue to work issue by issue, starting with the liberation of a younger generation that is trapped in student loan debt. We bring them back in and we bring them into society to lead the charge for a Green New Deal, for ending environmental racism, for ending police violence, for creating health care and education as human rights, and a foreign policy based on international law and human rights. We can create an America and a world that works for all of us. The power to do that is not just in our hopes and our dreams. Right here and now, it's in our hands. Join us, and thank you so much to you, Ryan, and thank you to the Huffington Post for making this possible today. Thank you for joining us. Spread the word and join the team at Jill2016.com.
Come back soon. Jill Stein, candidate for president of the Green Party ticket.